I love comic books. For just a moment, I can immerse myself in the stories where the physically impressive superheroes put on their flashy costumes and go face to face with the bad guys. Everything makes sense, even if it's set in an absurdly over-the-top world. And at the end of the day, the good guys will always triumph and the fans are happy. It should come as no surprise then that another pop culture staple has a massive overlap with its fan base. Pro wrestling, because it's almost the exact same thing. Physically impressive wrestlers, flashy costumes. We all buy into the story so much that an evil undead mortician could go on to have the most legendary career in all of the WWE. But unlike comic books, the villains in wrestling actually stack up more wins, which makes us want to see the heroes take them down even more. The deeper I look into it, the more intertwined the two medium actually become. The two are made for each other, from Superman's design being based on the same circus strongmen who turned Greco-Roman wrestling into the pro wrestling spectacle we know it as, up until today with wrestlers portraying superheroes in our films. From wrestlers wearing gear inspired by heroes, to wrestlers showing up in the comics themselves. In honor of WrestleMania weekend, I thought it'd be a great idea to take just the slightest detour from my usual comic book niche and nerd out about one of my other pop cultural interests. I feel like a good place to start is within the ring itself. Out of all of the out there gimmicks that someone could come up with as their in-ring persona, there have been a surprising number of American pro wrestlers who have used superheroes as their thing. There's been the laughably bad Arachna Man from WCW, to Owen Hart's Blue Blazer persona that he used to distance himself from the rest of his family, or even Nikki Cross's Nikki ASH, or Almost a Superhero, who was the only superhero gimmicks performer to actually win a world title in the WWE. However, the most enjoyably bad was the Hurricane, a comparatively smaller guy with a Green Lantern tattoo who almost always ends the match staring up at the lights, was shockingly over with the fans. He also enlisted the help of Molly Holly, Stacy Keibler, and Rosie to join his superhero team. His highlight was definitely when he got a singles win over The Rock. Just don't look too closely at this Stone Cold shaped asterisk. It was a really cool moment. That's not even getting into the one-off gear used for major events that were inspired by the comics, like Seth Rollins using hints of Deadpool at SummerSlam 2017 and Thanos in SummerSlam 2018. Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott walking into WrestleMania 37 as Harley and the Joker, Sasha Banks with a Spider-Man tribute for Fastlane 2021, and Johnny Gargano at pretty much every single NXT takeover was a reference to some Marvel hero. And I can't not talk about the wrestler who took their love of comic books to the next level, and in my opinion, he's the greatest of all time, Rey Mysterio. Whether it's Daredevil in WrestleMania 19, The Flash at WrestleMania 20, The Joker at 25, Captain America at 27, or when Rey Mysterio was Marvel's Mysterio at WrestleMania 35, they were all iconic. His Silver Surfer body paint at SummerSlam 07, But two of arguably the most important wrestling pay-per-views outside of the WWE, Rey Mysterio was there, and he was also dressed up as a superhero. All In 2018, the most successful indie show of all time that kick-started the launch of the AEW, Rey was in the main event dressed as Wolverine. And WCW's Halloween Havoc 1997, the greatest match that WCW ever put on, the match that brought mainstream American attention to Lucha wrestling, and the match that solidified him and Eddie Guerrero as icons of the industry. And his ring gear for this match was inspired by the Phantom, a Golden Age hero who, at the time, was recently adapted into a box office flop. Rey Mysterio's love of comics isn't an outlier among mass wrestlers. The influence of comic book superheroes is ingrained into the very fabric of Lucha Libre and Japanese strong style. The mask serves several purposes. One, it helps the fans easily identify the performers moving at high speeds from a distance when you're focusing on the blue guy fighting the silver guy. It also helps invoke a particular archetype that they were going for. It could be the ferocity of a particular animal, the spirit of an Aztec warrior, and of course, superheroes. And the same goes in Japan, where you have wrestlers like Tiger Mask, who have passed down their mantle to 6 different performers, not including spin-offs or mirrored versions, of course. And one of New Japan Pro Wrestling's biggest stars, Jushin Thunder Liger, was quite literally pulled from the manga superhero series Jushin Liger. And even the most influential luchador of all time used the blossoming medium of comic book superheroes to create his persona, El Santo. His in-ring career was so legendary from the 40s until the 80s that he was elevated to actual superhero status among the people who saw him wrestle. El Santo lived the gimmick of a mass superhero. He became a symbol of truth and justice to the children of Mexico. But of course, his legacy is also immortalized in the 52 films that he starred in, where you take on Dracula, zombies, or international spy rings, as well as being the titular hero for so many Spanish-language comic books. El Santo comics also spawned a whole subgenre of comics themselves, and there have been so many stories to use wrestling as a plot point. Like in Marvel, how Spider-Man's origins begin with him trying to become a pro wrestler, to make some quick cash before he let Uncle Ben's killer run past him, or when the Thing went solo from the Fantastic Four, and joined an all-super-powered wrestling promotion called Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, which seems like the most logical form of entertainment in a world of superheroes. I'm just saying. The Thing actually beat the Beyonder, one of Marvel's god-level characters, clean in a match during Secret Wars 2. Although the downsides of being a superhero pro wrestler is quite literally the plot of an indie comic called The Gimmick, where the main character is secretly superpowered and accidentally kills his opponent in the ring, and needs to then hide away in Mexico. Great book, highly recommend it. Over in DC, Killer Croc was also a professional wrestler in his day job, but surprisingly, Bane isn't actually a luchador in most continuities. His mask is very much inspired by Lucha Libre, but it wasn't until 2015 when Batman 66 started to reimagine modern Batman characters into the classic series when they finally did something with Bane's luchador mask, other than it highly resembling a, not kid-friendly mask. Also, in Flash 787, Wally West was searching for Barry Allen across the multiverse and subbed across WAM, Wrestling Across the Multiverse, where the Flash becomes tag team champions with Omega Bam Man, a clear nod to Bam Bam Bigelow and Macho Man, another fun comic read for wrestling fans just for all the little references alone. But more tangibly connected to actual pro wrestling promotions is when the wrestlers themselves appear on the pages. Kevin Nash and the Ultimate Warrior had their own comic series, and the WWE had a few series during the Attitude Era with the horror publisher Chaos Comics, and they were definitely a choice. But before then, WCW had a very short 12-issue run with Marvel. It follows its own pre-NWO storyline that could have been seen on screen for one issue, and then in the next, it's Sting trying to stop Cactus Jack from blowing up a cruise ship. This series made absolutely no sense, and it was kinda bad, and was the entire reason why they canceled the WCW vs. Marvel series. To think, we could have had a Hulk versus Hulk Hogan fight. Except we kind of did. In Marvel Comics Presents number 45, the Incredible Hulk interrupts a wrestler calling himself Hulk. He then calls him an embarrassing imposter, no-sells all of his offense, and calls his cartoon show stupid just for good measure, before throwing him out of the building. And somewhere, the Iron Sheik would have just gladly shed a tear. There have also been many wrestlers to pick up the pen and write their own stories. I mean, it's no surprise that many of the great wrestlers who spent years writing their characters, promos, and in-ring storylines would also be gifted writers in other fields as well. There's 2001 Spider-Man's Tangled Web number 14, which was written by Scott Levi, better known across many promotions as Raven. It finally gave some story to Crusher Hogan, the pro wrestler that Spider-Man fought in his very first appearance in 1962. Oh look, a comic book character who was also a pro wrestler named Hogan, 17 years before Terry used that name. For that story, Raven used his industry knowledge to peel the curtain back on the, at the time, secret of sports entertainment. It explained some of the wrestling terms they used to the readers, like promo, no-sell, the heel-face dynamic, but also shoots, when a wrestler goes into business for themselves and tries to legitimately hurt their opponent. Which, yeah, it would have taken an actual pro wrestler to fix all the plot holes as to why Peter would just get into a ring and fight a pro wrestler for money. Because you know how the magic is made. So the story goes that Crusher Hogan was paid off by a rival promotion to sink his own by Shoot fighting the fans, but he still cared about the art enough to put on a good match, because he knew that anyone who could bring him down would then become a hero. And there's also many other comics that are unrelated to wrestling but still worth mentioning. We also have AJ Mendez, better known as AJ Lee when she was in the WWE, who wrote many comics like the Dungeons & Dragons novel At the Spine of the World. Her real-life husband, CM Punk, also wrote for several characters at Marvel, including Thor and Shang-Chi, as well as helming the Drax solo series. Yeah, that story at the end of Guardians 3, when the hard and grizzled Drax the Destroyer now needs to care for the safety of all those children, that was actually CM Punk's Drax number 6. And Nyla Rose wrote the reintroduction of Thunderbird back into Marvel during the Krakoa era. And with Rose being of Native American descent, it was very fitting for her to bring back the most impactful single-issue character of all of comic book history. Which brings us to the most visible way that wrestlers have been crossing over into the superhero world. By starring as them in films. Lex Luger was Superman in the Superboy show. Macho Man Randy Savage was Bonesaw in Spider-Man. And Kevin Nash was the Russian in the Thomas Jane Punisher film, but he was also Super Shredder in Ninja Turtles 2. But there's also so many more smaller cameos like Triple H playing a bodyguard vampire in Blade Trinity, or Zeus playing the prisoner who throws the detonator out of the ship in Dark Knight, and Tyler Mane who played Sabretooth in the 2000s X-Men film. Then as superhero films went into overdrive, we got wrestling headliners taking on larger starring roles. Dave Bautista as Drax the Destroyer, John Cena as Peacemaker, and The Rock, who had already been Hollywood's largest superstar, finally put on the cape for Black Adam. And that's not even getting into all the wrestlers who have played one-off roles in DC shows on the CW, which come entirely from Cody Rhodes' real-life friendship with Green Arrow star Stephen Amell. And with all that, I'm not even scratching the surface of all the connections between pro wrestling and comic books. But I'd like to hear from you guys. Which wrestler do you think would be perfect to step in the world of Marvel or DC? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this week's video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more weekly content on comic books and nerd stuff. I've been Eric, and you've been awesome.